Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are in the Nevi'im Series, and I'm just looking. Chapter 16 and 17 are small enough that we can actually do them together, if you don't mind. So, let's get it. I'd like to dedicate this shiur to Rav Bernstein and my mother, Elizabeth Roque, and also Carolyn Jones. Who would you like to dedicate this shiur to? May their memories be for a blessing. All right, let me see if that's too much. That too much light? All right. Can y'all see okay? All right. Because I am nearsighted, so that's why I'm always taking off my glasses. All right. So this one is titled, I ain't gonna lie, I want a little action. I just want a little action in between this administrative stuff. This is beautiful, but little action, just a little bit. Okay, so we have our I'm so sorry. I'm using the Prophets, the Reuben edition from artscroll.com. You see this houses both Joshua and Judges, so we'll be in this book for a bit. And highly recommend this book. In the US, I have to tell you, they have ArtScroll in the U.S. They have a firm payment plan. If you're interested in purchasing a few more books than normal, and you can spread that payment out over time and in installments. So I just wanted to let you know that this seems like they just started doing this. So for those of you that are interested in the book, you can purchase them and pay over time. Okay, so let's look at what we have here for the intro. So the intro says, we're in chapter 16, the territory of Joseph. So the two tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, they're located in the center of the country, north of Judah and Benjamin, although half of Manasseh was east of the Jordan. Their territory, like Judah's, was allocated before that of the other tribes, because the brothers Judah and Joseph had been the leaders of the family. Who knew that? Who knew Judah and Joseph was leading the family? I didn't know that. And because, also the sages continue, because future royalty would come from them. The Davidic dynasty from Judah and the kings of the breakaway 10 tribes from Ephraim. Interesting. So they're saying, I'm sorry, this is not the sages. This is the editor's notes regarding, I guess, what the sages say. But Judah and Joseph are the leaders of the family, because you're going to get the king that comes from Judah. And after a while, when Israel breaks and you have the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, you're going to get kings that come from Ephraim. So that's how you get the two. Wow. Joseph, the 10 tribes from Ephraim. That's how they say it. So Judah and Joseph. Ephraim is from Joseph and all the other. So it's just, wow. So cool. Rashi notes that the territory between Judah's northern border and Joseph's southern border later become the province of Benjamin. Just put this on mute. Okay, let's read verses 1 through 5. So the lot for the children of Joseph went out from Jordan opposite Jericho to the waters of Jericho to the east, the wilderness that ascends from Jericho to the mountain to Bethel. And it went from Bethel to Luz and passed to the border of Archite and Ataroth. It descended westward to the border of Japhlite, and to the border of lower Beth Horon and until Gezer. Its outlets were to the sea. The children of Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim, received their heritages. The border of the children of Ephraim, according to their family, was the border of their inheritance to the east was from Atroth Adar to upper Beth Horon. Okay, so let's read the note that we have here. So this one is called the primacy of Ephraim. So the chapter begins, and verse 4 repeats that the portion of Joseph as a whole was designated, and only afterward was it divided between the two parts of the tribe. So in verse 4, Manasseh is mentioned first in deference to his firstborn status. But then in verse 5, where the division of the land between the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim begins, Ephraim's portion is given first. This is in consonance with Jacob's wish that Ephraim be given precedence over Manasseh. And we get that from Genesis chapter 48, verse 20. As noted by many commentators, Manasseh and Joseph's assistant in administering the affairs, Manasseh was Joseph's assistant in administering the affairs of state, while Ephraim was Jacob's student in Torah. Thus, Jacob established the precedent in Jewish life that the Torah scholar comes before the man of affairs. So, as noted by many commentators, Manasseh, the child of Joseph, Manasseh, the son of actual Joseph, not talking tribes, was Joseph, his father. He was his assistant, his father's assistant, in administering the affairs of state. But Ephraim, the other son of Joseph, was his grandfather Jacob's student in Torah. So Ephraim would sit under his grandfather and learn Torah. And so that's what the sages are bringing up here. Thus, Jacob established the precedent in Jewish life that the Torah scholar comes before the man of affairs. Okay, that was a nugget. That's why we got to stay reading this administrative stuff. You never know when you're going to get a nugget. Just drop out here, hit you on the head. Verse 6, Pasuk 6. The border went out westward north of Mikmethath, and the border circled to the east of Taanath Shiloh, passing it on the east of Janoah. It descended from Janoah to Ataroth and Naarath, and reached Jericho and went out to the Jordan. From Tappuah, the border went westward to the brook of Kanah, and its outlets were to the sea. This is the heritage of the children of Ephraim according to their families. There were isolated cities belonging to the children of Ephraim that were within the heritage of the children of Manasseh. In all these cities and their villages, full stop. There's a note here for verse 9. There were isolated cities. So in addition to its province, Ephraim received cities that were within the territory of Manasseh. Thus, they were isolated from the rest of Ephraim's territory. And let's just slide on in. There's a couple more pesukim. One more pesukim for 16, and then we'll go right into 17. They did not drive. Here come the little action. They did not drive out the Canaanite that dwelled in Gezer. Rather, the Canaanite dwelled in the midst of Ephraim until this day. They were indentured laborers. Now, if anybody's rocking with me when we do Judges, this stuff is important. These little notes, they didn't drive out the Canaanites and they were indentured. This is important because this is who they're going to be fighting in Judges. So Joshua sets up what's going to be happening in Judges with all these different skirmishes going on. Okay, so now we're going to jump over to Perek 17. Let's read that. Do we have any more notes? Oh, excuse me. There's a note for what we just read there. For verse 10 in Perek 16. So although the Canaanites of Gezer remained subservient to the tribe of Ephraim, the Ephraimites did not drive them out as they were required to. And according to the Malbim, Ephraim was unable to do so because Gezer was one of the cities that was isolated within the territory of Manasseh. This implies, however, that Manasseh would not cooperate with Ephraim to conquer Gezer, which was rather difficult. So according to the Kli Yakar, Gezer was in the boundaries of Ephraim, and the verse means to criticize Ephraim for not expelling them. How could Ephraim tolerate the presence of idolaters in their midst? With all of this pernicious influence, this implies, Okay, that got a little good. That got a little good in the end. Let me get some coffee. Sage is starting to talk now. I know that's right, Sages. All right, let's jump on over to that Perek 17. Do we have a little? Nope, we don't have a intro. So let's get into it because we have a note here for verse 1. Then was the lot for the tribe of Manasseh, though he was Joseph's firstborn, for Machir, the firstborn of Manasseh, the father of Gilead, because he was a man of war. Unto him was Gilead and Bashan. So here's the note here. The part where it says, though he was Joseph's firstborn, that is, even though Manasseh as Joseph's firstborn, would have been expected to receive his portion before Ephraim, this wasn't done. The reason for that is Joshua was following the precedent of Jacob, his father in Genesis 48:19, who had given his primary blessing to Ephraim and explained that although Manasseh's descendants would be great, Ephraim's would be greater. And that note comes from the Metzudot. Malbim renders because, the part where it says because, that is, the verse explains that Manasseh received portions on both sides of the Jordan as if he was given a double portion because he was Joseph's firstborn. And so for the part in the verse where it says, for Machir, the firstborn of Manasseh, he was a man of war. This is because Machir was the firstborn, his family took its share before the rest of the tribe. And that note comes from Rashi. The Abarbanel conjectures that because Machir was a man of war, that is, that his part of Manasseh's family consisted of powerful fighting men, the Machirites volunteered to settle east of the Jordan in order to defend the vulnerable eastern flank of the country against foreign invaders. They settled there not for economic reasons, but for the sake of their fellow Jews. This might also explain why they settled there even though they did not originally ask for that land. And unlike the tribes of Reuben and Gad, apparently they did not have extensive flocks. And we can see that in Numbers chapter 32. As noted in Numbers chapter 32, verse 33, other reasons are offered for their choice. Amongst them, that Moshe wanted one tribe to straddle the Jordan in order to maintain a strong familial connection between the Jewish settlements on the east and the west, lest there be a total split. Or because he knew that without a strong presence of Torah scholars, like the family of Machir, the settlement on the east would weaken spiritually. So the part where it says the father of Gilead, Machir had a son named Gilead. Alternatively, Machir was the father of the territory called Gilead. So in the sense that he was its leader. And that note also comes from the Metzudot. Let's continue on in, Pasuk 2. There was also a portion for the remaining sons of Manasseh according to their families, for the children of Abiezer, for the children of Helek, for the children of Asriel, for the children of Shechem, for the children of Hefer, and for the children of Shemidah. These were the male children of Manasseh, son of Joseph, according to their families. But Zelophehad, son of Hefer, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, had no sons, only daughters. Remember him? He had those daughters. And these are the names of his daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, Tirzah. They approached before Eleazar the Cohen, before Joshua, son of Nun, and before the leaders, saying, Hashem commanded Moshe to give us a heritage amongst our brethren, and he gave them, according to the word of Hashem, a heritage among their father's brothers. 10 portions fell to Manasseh, besides the land of Gilead and the Bashan, which are on the other side of Jordan, because the women of Manasseh received a heritage amongst his sons. So the land of Gilead went to Manasseh's remaining sons. So we're going to read now a little bit about the daughters of Zelophehad. So the story of these righteous women is found in Numbers chapter 27, verse 1 through 11. There the Torah relates that their right to their deceased father's inheritance in Eretz Yisrael was confirmed by God. Now they came to claim that legacy. They're like, we talked to Moshe about this. And they said back in Numbers, they're like, our father died, he had no sin. He paid, not that he had no sin, but whatever his sin was, it's done. Now we want to be able, he has no sons, So, but we don't want his legacy and, his inheritance to go away. So how do we handle this, Moshe? And Moshe's like, let me ask God about that. Okay. So in verse 5, where it says 10 portions fell to Manasseh, the sages are talking here. 6 portions went to the families mentioned in verse 2. The daughters of Zelophehad divided 4 portions amongst themselves as follows: their father's portion, a share of the portion of an uncle who died childless in the wilderness. Since Heifer, their grandfather, was a firstborn who was entitled to a double share of inheritance, they received part of each of these 2 portions. So, but they got a lot going on. We did. So, their father's portion and a share of an uncle who died childless in the wilderness. And since Heifer, their grandfather, was a firstborn who was entitled, to a double, a double share of the inheritance, they received part of those 2 portions. Woo, they got everything. All the men was, wow, okay, in their family. Had some issues going on there. Not bad issues, but enough to make how do we do things if there's no man to pass them on to very apparent. Pasuk 7. The border of Manasseh was from Asher to Mikmethath, which faces Shechem, and the border went to the south of the inhabitants of En-Tappuah. The land of Tappuah belonged to Manasseh, but Tappuah on the border of Manasseh belonged to the children of Ephraim. The border descended to the brook of Kenah, south of the brook. And these cities were Ephraim's in the midst of the cities of Manasseh. The border of Manasseh was on the north of the brook, and its outlets were to the sea. The southern part of Joseph's portion was Ephraim's, and the northern part was Manasseh's. The sea was their western border, and they met with Asher on the north and Issachar on the east. Now let's read Pasuk 11 through 13, because we got a note here. So 11, there was unto Manasseh within the territory of Issachar and within the territory of Asher. That's weird how they kind of like go into each other. Beth Shean and its towns, Ibleam and its towns, and the inhabitants of Dor and its towns, and the inhabitants of Endor, ooh, I know a witch from there, and its towns, and the inhabitants of Ta'anach and its towns, and the inhabitants of Megiddo and its towns. 3 provinces, but the children, we know Megiddo, but the children of Manasseh were not able to drive out the inhabitants of these cities, and the Canaanites wished to dwell in this land. It happened when the children of Israel became strong that they imposed tribute on the Canaanite, but they did not drive them out. Put that in your little Rolodex head thing, your Apple Notes or whatever in your head. So let's read the note here. Manasseh's isolated cities. So just as Ephraim had isolated cities in Manasseh's territory, we read that in 16:9 of Joshua. So Manasseh had cities in the territories of Issachar and Asher, but the people of Manasseh were unable to dislodge the Canaanites from those areas. When the Jewish forces became stronger, they imposed their will upon the Canaanites, but still didn't drive them out. Whether they were unable or preferred not to is not clear, but Joshua rebuked Israel for not exerting themselves to eliminate the Canaanite presence. After his death, the rebuke was repeated in harsher terms by a prophet, and we will see that in Judges chapter 2 when the action starts. Listen, we have a Torah Parsha where I think it's Torah Parsha. Rav Bernstein gives us the Rav Bernstein notes of the Torah Parsha Terumah. And in this, he's talking about Israel. And he's talking about Israel in a way that's just, you don't think of it that way. So God has requirements for Israel. God requires Israel to do things. Israel then turns to its people and says, Hashem has required me to do these things, and I'm requiring you guys to make that happen. So the nation of Israel, which we know is outside of space and time and inside space and time, requires its people to do things so that Israel can turn to Hashem and say, it's done. And so when I'm reading this now, it just becomes more apparent as I play with this concept when Joshua is saying, let's see, where did we read that? It happened when the children of Israel became strong that they imposed tribute on the Canaanites. So Israel became strong and imposed these tributes on the Canaanites, but they did not drive them out. Israel didn't do what it was supposed to do and say to Hashem, look, this whole land is either Canaanite free, or the Canaanites are actually choosing to follow you as their God. You know, the options that we saw in a previous chapter, that which were given to all inhabitants of Canaan. Okay, so we're going to do verse 14 through 18. The children of Joseph spoke to Joshua, saying, why have you given me an inheritance of only a single lot and a single portion, seeing that I am a numerous people? For Hashem has blessed me to such an extent. And Joshua said to them, if you are such a numerous people, ascend to the forest and clear an area for yourselves there, in the land of the Perizzite and the Rephaim, since the mountain range of Ephraim is too confined for you. And the children of Joseph said, the mountain is insufficient for us, and all the Canaanites that dwell in the land of the valley, those in Beth Shean and its villages, and those in the valley of Jezreel, have iron chariots. And Joshua then spoke to the house of Joseph, to Ephraim and Manasseh, saying, you are a numerous people, and you have great strength. You should not have only one lot. That mountain shall be yours, because it is a forest, and you can cut it down, and its outskirts will be yours. For you shall drive out the Canaanite, even though they have iron chariots and are strong. Okay, so we got a lot of notes here. Now, I'm a little bit confused. Let's see if it gets into this. I thought that the areas of the land were picked by lot. I thought they cast lots and things to see what Hashem would have each tribe's portion be. So I'm a little bit confused here. Did they pick a lot? And it was like, what is this? Who fitting on here? Not us. Joshua, not Joshua's tribe. Joshua, not Joseph's tribe. Joshua, who is this for? This little, I can't even put my foot on this. What is this? Unless they fighting with them like they don't, I don't know. So let's see. Let's read the notes and see what's going on here. You know, I like me a little action. So this is an introduction for what we just read. Manasseh's complaint and Joseph's response. Joshua's response. Although only the people of Manasseh had a grievance, they were joined by their brother tribe, Ephraim. That comes from the Ramban. That the complaint applied only to Manasseh is clear, because Beth Shean in verse 16, what we read, was in the province of Manasseh, and it was Manasseh, not Ephraim, that could have had a grievance, because Manasseh's population had grown very much, while Ephraim still remained stable. That comes from the Radak. The Vilna Gaon, however, comments that Ephraim too had grown phenomenally, but their growth did not begin until after Israel entered its land. This was in fulfillment of Jacob's blessing that Joshua's offering would proliferate like fish within the land. That's Genesis 48:16. That is, Jacob conditioned his blessing on their presence in the land. There are several views amongst the commentators regarding how the land was apportioned. For a lengthy discussion of what the complaint was, according to the various views, you can see the Abarbanel and Art Scroll of Joshua. Aren't we reading Art Scroll of Joshua? Briefly, the land was divided according to the numbers of people who left Egypt. Oh, let me read that again. Briefly, they're saying that the land was divided according to the numbers of people who left Egypt. And during the 40 years between the Exodus and the last census before the entry into Eretz Yisrael, Manasseh grew by 70%, from 32,200 to 52,700, by far the largest increase of any of the tribes. In addition, the sages in Baba Basra 118a state that this growth was reflected in large numbers of young people who were coming of age in the years that the land was being settled, but were not included in the number upon which the allocation was based. Therefore, the people of Manasseh presented their grievance to Joshua. Them jokers had a population boom. And they're like, Joshua, you using, this old data over here. Look how many people we have. Okay, we have a few more notes from verse 14 where it says, only a single lot and a single portion was given. So although every tribe received a single portion, the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim argued that the two of them together received only enough for a single tribe. In addition, chapter 16 verse 1 implies that the entire tribe of Joseph, Manasseh, and Ephraim was given a single territory that was later divided between them. Now they contended it's too small to divide. That comes from the Ramban Noon. And verses 15 through 18 have a note. Joshua could not give them more land since the extent of the tribe's territory was divinely ordained. Now we're getting into what I was wondering. Instead, he told them to conquer the rest of their portion, drive out the Perizzites, the Rephaim, and clear the forest to provide inhabitable land. He turned their own argument against them. Precisely because they were so populous, they had the manpower to fight the enemy and clear the forest. The tribes of Joseph responded that they were powerless against the powerfully armed natives, but Joshua rejected their claims. This refrain is found at the end of this book and at the beginning of Judges. Well entrenched though the Canaanites were, the tribes should have fought together and helped one another take over the lands that had been ceded to them by God. So, just like we say, don't study alone, let's study together. They weren't supposed to war alone. They were supposed to war together and take care of everybody's territories. That's how it's supposed to be. So what? They got iron chariots. We got Hashem. Did you not see what Hashem was doing over there in AI and all these other places? So you got Hashem. You come together and you knock these things out, and that's what's not happening here. So Joshua is like, yeah, I hear you and everything, but next. So, but it is interesting to see that their lots were chosen with these populous numbers from the fighting men of the Exodus time when they were in the wilderness. And then you get this population boom, and they're like, yeah, we surveyed this land, it's not enough. And then to see Joshua's like, okay, well, you have to develop your land too. You got to put some skin in the game. Everybody knows what happens when you just give people handouts and they didn't invest any sweat equity or anything into it. They don't really appreciate it. So fighting for something and everybody coming together and fighting is, you are going to really make sure that you keep that land, and you're going to keep the law, the Constitution that you've been given to uphold that land, which is the Torah. So it's starting to get a little bit juicy. I hope you are enjoying that, because I am. And I love, even though it's quite administrative, I love seeing the little lights of the setup going into Judges, because, you can see already right now, Israel kind of ain't acting as one, and so what's that going to lead to in the book of Judges? So, Shoftim. I will see you next time. Please, if anything struck you interesting or you got something to say, put it down below. Don't be stingy with your thoughts. We are a Habruta. We're working together, and we ain't mind readers. And I want to learn from you too, as I'm learning from our school. And so let's hear what you got to say too, so I can grow and the rest of our family can grow from your insights. Make sure you put a reference with it. Don't just pull something out the air. But if you have a comment, say a comment. But if you have something to help us to expand our understanding on something, put a reference with that. So see you next time.